One of the things that really bugs me about the American electorate is a twofold problem. One part of it is that we don't actually understand our government. For the most part, most Americans don't even have an overall clue of how the government functions. So let's start with this statement. Bearing in mind, these are overgeneralizations. They're rules that you can follow, but they're not the be-all and end-all. So you look at the House of Representatives, their specific job is to make a budget. You look at the Senate, they actually legislate. They actually make laws. You look at the executive branch, they're the chief law enforcement officer. So the Senate passes a law, the executive branch enforces it. And then you look at the judicial branch. When there's a question as to what the law means, the judicial branch interprets the law. All right. So overall, that's our government. Now, the purpose of this video is to get the electorate to understand how their voting decisions define that government. There are many things that bother me about the American election system. One is, without question, the second worst John Roberts court decision, by any standard, was Citizens United. That ability to remove transparency from campaign funding destroyed our election system. And as long as we continue to abide by the Citizens United rule, the worse it gets. So the next time you go and vote for the Senate, I don't care which political party you vote for people who are committed to passing legislation that undoes the Citizens United decision. Right? So you're going to vote for people who demand absolute transparency in campaign funding. That's my advice. There's a large number of changes I would make to our election system. Mr. Beat, who I will link him in the description. If you don't know who he is, go check him out. Caveat, I don't agree with everything that he says, but his work is well researched, it's presented well, and he's very illuminating. He's educational. He's great. But Mr. Beat has taken on the project of increasing the number of representatives in the House. I think that's a great idea. We have too many people represented by one person in the House right now. The real issue that you're going to come up with is that you have to rewrite the section of the Constitution that deals with apportionment. There's two ways to do that. The Senate can pass a law, and they have to be careful when they do this because they're changing the Constitution, which means that it has to be a two-tier law. One will give them the right to change the Constitution on an as-needed basis when the conditions demand it. As stands right now, it has to be done through an amendment to the Constitution. Now, the amendment has to be ratified by the states. The problem with that is that you can't guarantee all the states, or I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's 35 states, have to be on board to to ratify a new amendment to the Constitution. And that's a big ask. And I approve of the fact that it's a big ask. Changing the Constitution should be hard. I think it needs to be hard. Because without changing the Constitution, simply by changing the way that we legislate, the Newt Gingrich plan. So when Newt Gingrich decided that no matter what a Democrat does, even if he agrees with it, he's going to vote against it. That was Newt Gingrich, and followed up by his student, Mitch McConnell. When they decided that was the way the legislature was going to run, they changed the way the executive branch has to behave. That's why we have so many executive orders now. Please understand, an executive order is only a law during that presidency. The next president has the right to undo any executive order. He doesn't have to go through Congress. But thanks to Mitch McConnell and Newt Gingrich, we put our presidents, Republican, Democrat, I don't care which, we put them in the position where they have to do an inordinate amount of executive orders. Because currently it's the Republican Party, but at any time it can switch. It can be Democrats that do this. Currently it's almost exclusively Republicans that do this, to where they don't want to govern, so they don't. The overwhelming majority of Republicans in both the Senate and the House have made the conscious decision to not do anything, to not do their job. So, how do we fix that? I have a few ideas, but they all require either an amendment to the Constitution or legislation. I like the idea of expanding the House. Get more representatives in there. The other thing we should do, I like the idea of making the tenor for the House longer. The way we've decided that we want to campaign, and there are reasons for this, but one of the big reasons is that you have no time. So when you're in the House of Representatives, you can't work on a budget because as soon as you're elected, you have to start campaigning. You have to start fundraising so that you can go into the next election. So if you make the tenure of the House of Representatives, say 4 years instead of 2 years, then maybe the House can spend 1 year actually writing and legislating a budget. Gosh! The representatives doing their job. How refreshing would that be? The other thing I want to see is all campaigning is free. There's no cost to campaign. We've forgotten, and I mean the American electorate. I don't mean the legislator, because they forgot too, but they forgot because we, the American electorate, decided we didn't care enough to think about it. A political campaign is a job interview. You go in front of the American people and you say, these are the things that I want to do. Now, in deference to that, there is no such thing as a campaign promise. Stop using that nomenclature. It's wrong. Period. Remember, we're in a Republican representative democracy. Now, what does that mean? That means the legislators have to agree, at the very least, by simple majority, at the most extreme, a supermajority, which is 2/3. They have to agree, we're going to pass this budget. We're going to make this law. So I don't care what office you're running for at the federal level. You're running for the House, you're running for the Senate, you're running for the presidency. A campaign promise is aspirational. It is not a promise, because the candidate can't make that happen by themselves. It has to happen with the entire legislature. And in either one, the House or the Senate, with the budget in particular, both houses have to agree. So even if the entire House agrees on this budget, if the Senate doesn't like it, the budget doesn't become law. Which means that they all need to work with each other. That's why we should all be horribly angry with specifically Newt Gingrich and Mitch McConnell, but Republicans as a whole, because Republicans have decided we're not going to govern. We're not going to let anything get through the legislature. In deference to that, it's extremely easy to respect somebody that doesn't compromise. It's real easy to look at somebody like, excuse me. It's real easy to look at somebody like Rand Paul and say, oh yeah, I mean, he's brilliant, he's tough, he stands his ground. No, I agree, there are times that you have to do that. But if at no time you look at an idea and say, yeah, I can live with that, in spite of the fact that you don't entirely agree with it. In other words, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, right? The problem with our particular form of government is changes are incremental. They happen in small steps. With legislators like Rand Paul, with legislators like Mitch McConnell, with legislators like Newt Gingrich, who, thank God, he's retired, but now he's a talking head on Fox News, and he spouts shit every time he talks. The guy is a butthole. A human butthole. Every time something comes out of his mouth, it's garbage. You know? So you look at these guys, it's so easy to respect them because they don't compromise. But because they don't compromise, nothing gets done. And then we, the electorate, wonder, oh, how did this happen? Because you elected them, you idiot. In the very beginning, right after the Confederate States, the Confederate State, let me try that again. The United Confederate States of America collapsed in 1779. When that government collapsed and we began working on a more federalist form, there was a group in Philadelphia which today would look like the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. At that time, and I want to be careful because I don't necessarily think it was their fault. They were trying to solve a specific problem. And this is one of the issues that you have with governing. Focus becomes very narrow. You see only in tunnel vision. Now, human beings were not really good at organizing systems. And I'm speaking globally here. I'm speaking about the human animal in general. We're really bad at systemic outcomes. We're bad at predicting those outcomes. And this is every human being on Earth, all 8.25 billion of us. Just as a general rule, there are some of us that know how to do it, but the majority of us, and even those that know how to do it, the ones that are really, really good at it, they'll admit, it's best guess, man. We're just throwing darts and hoping something hits the bullseye. We're bad at predicting systemic outcomes. So you work on what the big problem is. You work on the overarching problem, which will solve as many smaller problems as possible. So what they did was, do we want a stronger federal government? Do we want stronger states? Well, we realized with the Confederate States, the United Confederate States of America, we realized that a weak federal government and strong states was going to fail. Not because we knew before we set it up, because it did fail. It failed for one reason and one reason only. Because nobody wanted to compromise. No one was willing to say, yeah, this is good enough. It had to be my way or the highway. And the country failed. So Alexander Hamilton pretty much built this idea. A lot of help from James Madison and John Adams, and they got the stronger federal government built. But they only had two basic political parties. Everybody else's voice got shut out. So you had the State Rights Party, which was well represented by Thomas Jefferson, and you had the Federalist government, which was well represented by Alexander Hamilton. The Federalist government won, which ironically brings us to why there's a Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was so that we could raise an army, because the federal government was responsible for the Navy, but the federal government initially was not allowed to raise a standing army. The standing army had to be raised by the states. So for all of you people that say, the Second Amendment, that's what the Second Amendment was for. It was because the federal government originally was not allowed to have a standing army. When the founders struck down the original Constitution, the federal government did not have a standing army. And that was so that the president could not send the army to force compliance by the states. It really aggravates me that the electorate knows so little about both their government and their history. And I feel like I keep saying the same things over and over and over ad nauseum, and nobody listens. So let's go back to my point about we need election reform. Now, in my view, and I want to stress this is strictly my opinion, I don't have a monopoly on all the best answers. I don't have a monopoly on what's right. There's a lot of ways to fix this. One of the big problems we have is the polarity. The easiest way to fix the polarization of our government is to break the current political parties up. Give it more of a parliamentary feel. So you actually have to build coalition governments, right? So the Democrats don't just run over, right? Chuck Schumer doesn't make decisions Hakeem Jeffries doesn't just make decisions for Camilla Jayapal and the squad. They get to make their own decisions. And they get to actually go out and pitch those decisions to their electorate. And their electorate gets to decide, yes, these are good decisions, these are bad decisions. Break the political parties up. You have a pure MAGA wing or a pure fascist wing of the Republican Party. And they get to go out there and sell fascism to the American people. You have a pure, Commerce Department wing, which goes out and sells the need, the requirement for just unparalleled poverty among the population. They can have their own political party and so on, and just break the current political parties up. Then reform campaign structure. The FCC owns the airwaves. Your cable service, your free-to-air service, with the exception of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Everybody buys airtime. That's what your licensing fee is for. You buy the airtime from the federal government. All right, so on an election year, each candidate gets one 30-minute ad produced by the cable stations, produced by the free-to-air stations, produced by NPR, produced by these other media companies that are governed by the FCC. You get one 30-minute ad. It runs on all of them. There's no charge for production. There's no charge for running the ad. You don't have to buy the airtime. The production costs are absorbed. And then during the election year, that cost is deducted from your licensing fee if you want to keep it capitalist. The reality is, if we don't have a government, capitalism doesn't work. So, I don't see a need to reduce the fee either. But if you want to be, the whole universe has to be privatized, reduce the fee. Fine? Limit campaign length. There's no need. We need to be campaigning non-stop. It's aggravating. It's annoying. And it's how you end up with all of this stuff where it's just culture war. Culture wars affects our lives very little. 99% of people out there do not care if you're trans. They could not care less. You want to wear a dress in public? You want to be a man wearing a dress in public? Most of us will look at you, have a weird thought in our head. We might screw up our face, and we'll walk right by without saying a word. Because the reality is, it doesn't affect us. Nor should it affect us. We don't care. You live with the consequences of your decision. But your decision has no consequences for us. And we can go ahead and live our lives. This culture wars issues. Trans athletes. First of all, it's what? We've got like 20 trans athletes nationwide right now. Not to mention, when I was in school, and I know I'm not the only person, I could name off the top of my head at least 10 girls that I went to school with that could easily kick my ass without breaking a sweat. Had nothing to do with the fact that they were women. They were just stronger than I was. And those women are out there. If they want to participate in men's sports, I don't see why not. And even if they're not stronger than men, they want to participate with the men, again, why not? Sports are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be a way for us to engage with each other socially. It's a game. We're supposed to have a good time. Gender-specific bathrooms? Screw it. Put stalls in every bathroom in America and make them all unisex. Every bathroom has a stall. The only place where you mingle is where you wash your hands at the sink. Problem solved. Don't make it so complicated. Your religion doesn't like what I do? I don't follow your religion. It has no bearing on my life. There's no reason that I have to follow your religion. So, more political parties, shorter campaign time, free campaign ads. Then we, the electorate, more representatives. Then we, the electorate, can tell our representatives what we want. We can tell them these are the things we need. And who knows, God forbid, the government goes back to governing. And remember, these kinds of things are incremental. We're not going to be able to get all of these changes at once. It's going to take time. The first thing we need to do is make the Citizens United decision illegal. We need to insist. We need to demand as an electorate, who financed your campaign? And we can't be satisfied with all the money came from a PAC. No, who financed the PAC that gave money to your campaign? From the end to where that penny is being spent to buy an ad on the internet, all the way down to the beginning, to where that person made the initial campaign contribution. We need to be able to see every inch that penny traveled, from start to finish. Handle it the same way that we handle evidence rules for criminal investigations. So our campaign financing, the first change we need to make is we treat our campaign financing like a white-collar criminal investigation. Every penny has to be accounted for. Where it is, who it came from, where it's going, what it does, every penny. And we need complete transparency. Not 100%, beyond. We need 4 billion trillion % transparency on campaign funding. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to get rid of the need for campaign funding. Just get rid of campaign funding. So that when you run for a campaign, we can treat it like a job interview. Because that's what it is. It's a job interview. One last point. There is a good percentage, about 11%, if I'm not mistaken, of the electorate that are single issue voters. You're the problem. This is the only issue I care about. I don't care about any other issue, just this one single issue. You're the problem. You're the reason the government is the way it is. The government is a machine. It's a system. Yes, what you care about is important. It's extremely important. But it's not the only thing. There are other cogs to the system that have to function. If those cogs don't function, the government shuts down. And then you wonder how it got this bad. How could we have an entire political party that absolutely refuses to govern? How we can have an electorate that just won't even attempt to have empathy for the other side. It got this way because we voted for it. We voted for this. Well, now, let's vote for something different. And again, you single issue voters, you're the problem. You're the reason. I mean, there are other reasons too, but In my estimation, at least 98% of this is you. Don't elect legislators that refuse to compromise. And I'm not talking about the ones that blow smoke up your ass and say, oh yeah, I'll compromise. I mean, Maine has one of those. What's her name? Susan Collins. Oh, it's so hard to be a moderate. And then you vote with Trump every single fucking time. You're not a moderate. You're a MAGA Republican. You belong in the fascist wing of the Republican Party. Sell yourself as a fascist. If you vote with the fascist wing of the party every time, then sell yourself as a fascist. There are people that will vote for you. They will. And to be honest, it's a legitimate form of government. It's not a form of government I support, but it's a legitimate form of government. There are people who are comfortable in that form of government. Given certain caveats, view my video on I'm okay with an authoritarian government. All of those caveats still apply. Understand it's the last government you have. Understand that it will be overthrown by force. Understand that they will murder everyone to remain in power. If you understand all of those things and you're still willing to vote for it, more power to you, man. But let's do this. Let's elect a legislature which will legislate the illegality of the Citizens United court decision, and they'll legislate the mandate for absolute transparency in campaign funding. Let's take a look at expanding the House of Representatives. Let's take a look at making the tenure in the House of Representatives longer. Let's take a look at changing the apportionment rules so that we can have fewer representatives, fewer constituents per representative. And then let's break up our current political parties and go with a more parliamentary system so that we actually have to build a coalition government. Now, all that said, I still want elections handled at the county level. And when you're looking at New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, I want to say Dallas, Fort Worth, Baltimore, when you're looking at these enormous cities where you have multiple legislative districts, those elections get handled at the municipal level. Now, I want it done that way, not at the state level. I don't want the states handling elections anymore. The states have proven that they are not up to the task. The state legislators have proven that given the chance, they're going to legislate out any competition, which will put us right back here. So we make all of those changes, things get better for a little while, and then the state legislators legislate it so that it ends up exactly where we are now. And then none of those changes have happened. You want truly local truly local representation? Make the election infrastructure truly local. Put the election in the counties. Put the election commissions in the counties. They don't answer to the federal government. They keep a minimum, which we can use the 1965 Voter Rights Act as a template for the minimum. Now, that has to be handled through legislation as well. Because Justice Roberts, from the time he entered government as a White House attorney in the White House counsel's office under President Reagan, Justice Roberts' initial job at that time was to circumvent the Voting Rights Act, specifically Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 2. And it's been his mission from the beginning. So leaving it up to the judiciary, somebody like Justice Roberts, because he's not the only one that thinks that way. There is going to be another Justice Roberts who goes out of his way to disenfranchise everybody that disagrees with him. Excuse me. Just like Justice Roberts did. One moment, I'll be right back.